Welcome back to What Just Happened. Well, this is a very special moment for this show because we have in the studio a very special lady. Someone that I almost feel like I know because I've reported on her day in, day out ever since she became the victim of what I think is a terrible affront to freedom of speech. A warm welcome to Lucy Connolly. Hi, Lucy.
Hi, Kevin.
What happened to Lucy, folks, was this. Last summer, after the terrible Southport murders here in this country, where a fiend called Axel Ruda Cabana went into a kids' dance class up in the north of this country, little girls having a dance class, Taylor Swift dance class. And he brutally murdered 3 of them and badly injured several more, plus a few adults. It was a horrific rampage. It really, really was. It shocked the nation. There were riots after that. And amid these riots, Lucy, I'm going to say this, I think she agrees, she lost her temper. And she put a tweet out which the riots were really about our migrant crisis. The fact that this country continues to let in thousands and thousands of young men of sexually active age about whom we know nothing. And it is beginning to have a chilling effect on safety, particularly safety for women and children in this country, insofar as more and more of them, these asylum seekers, we know nothing about them, are being charged with, arrested for hundreds of serious crimes, many of them sexual. It was thought at the time when Lucy posted on Twitter, her tweet, that the culprit, the suspect, was indeed a migrant, an asylum seeker, the person who committed this absolutely shocking these murders. It turned out that that wasn't quite the case because the people of this country were kept in the dark by the Prime Minister, by the police, and by the authorities. It wasn't quite the case, but it turned out that this fiend, this young guy, I think he was only about 18, he is just 17 going on 18, that he was the son of migrants. So the riots weren't entirely unjustified. In fact, I say they were justified. In the midst of it, Lucy lost her temper and posted, send them home and so on and so forth. It wasn't, I think you'd agree, Lucy, your finest hour. No. But you lost your temper. And for this tweet, Lucy was arrested and ended up getting sentenced to 2 years and 7 months in jail. For our American audience, the listeners, the viewers over there, for the people in Australia, can you believe this? That in a country like Britain, where we are supposed to have freedom of speech, that a woman, a loving mother and wife, her husband is a local councillor, gets sent to jail. She'd never done anything wrong before in her life, not so much as a speeding ticket. Maybe one, I think. I've had about 20, so I'm a much worse criminal than Lucy ever was. She got sent to jail, 2 years and 7 months. Well, first of all, Lucy, let's talk about why you posted that tweet, because you have a personal story. Harry, your son, died due to NHS negligence. It was a mistake on the part of our health service. He would have turned 16 last week. Now, you saw what happened in Southport. You heard about, this awful carnage, the murder of these poor little girls. And as a mother who'd lost her son, you were filled with rage for the mothers of those poor little girls. Would that be an accurate summary of the way you were feeling when you posted that tweet?
Definitely anger at the whole situation. Anger at the fact that it was allowed to happen, but anger at the fact that how could these parents drop their babies off at a dance class and never get to pick them up? That we shouldn't be living a life like that. And I've recently actually this week was reading, I think it was in the Liverpool Echo, some quotes from some of the mums because there's an inquiry going on, and she said exactly that. I just want to give her a big hug and just say it's not your fault, because I get it. She's, she blames herself. It was my idea to send her there. We're good parents. We just sent her there to make bracelets and dance, and she never got to come home, and this nightmare never ends. And that's what people don't get. Yeah. This nightmare never does end, unfortunately. Yeah. You build a new life, but it is a life sentence of grief, and and it was so preventable. Yeah, it's just horrific.
And what you tweeted was words to the effect of "Send them home. I don't care. Call me a racist if you like. We've got to get these people out of the country." And something about attacking them or something, and therefore the charge against you was inciting violence.
Actually, the original charge and the charge that I pled guilty to didn't even use the word violence. The original charge was, on that day, I published written material that could have incited racial hatred or stirred up racial hatred. The word violence isn't actually used in my charge. That's another story in itself, because that kind of came later down the line. Oh, by the way, the Crown are prosecuting you on a 1A category 1A with intent to stir up serious violence. And all along I was saying, but that's not what I pled guilty to. That's not in the charge. If you read the charge on the charge sheet that when they read out that charge in the court, do you plead guilty or not guilty? The word violence is not used in that charge. You could have stirred up racial hatred. That's the charge.
You were, how soon are you, because of course you posted this tweet, and then only about 3 or 4 hours later, you thought better of it. I assume you sort of calmed down.
Yeah.
And then you took it down, didn't you? But by then it had 300,000 views or something.
Yeah.
So you thought that would be the end of the matter?
Actually, yeah, I didn't. Yeah, and I did think it was the end of the matter, because it didn't kind of rear its ugly head again for another week. So I posted on the actual day, literally within hours of it coming out that these children had been, massacred, and I was so upset. Wrote what I wrote, went out, calmed down, thought better of it, and I thought, even though I'm still really angry and I'm really upset and this isn't okay, I can't write that. That's not okay to write that, take it down. So that's what I did. Didn't engage in any of the comments, didn't do anything. I just went onto Twitter, deleted it. Didn't think anything more of it, really didn't, until a week later. Yeah. And then it kind of became some kind of like political movement against me. But a whole week went past from deleting that tweet and nothing had been said, and I was just carrying on Twitter as normal, like oblivious to the fact that somebody had screenshotted it and then was gonna
so a week later the police got in touch?
They did. So that, I think it was
by phone, or did they come around your house?
No, they came. They just turned up at the house and
they just knocked on your door?
Yeah, well, I was just coming back and just dropping Edie at the golf club, and I said, who's at the door? She checked the camera and she said, it's the police, and I thought, oh, here we go. But to be honest, I just thought they were going to come and give me, tell me off. Yeah. I didn't think for 1 minute they were going to arrest me there and then. And they were actually just leaving. So I went over to them and I said, oh, you just knocked on my door. I think you're looking for me. Yeah. That's the irony of it. Yeah. And they were like, yes, can we come in? I said, of course, thinking, I'm going to get, a rollicking here. And, oh no, we're straight away, we're arresting you, da-da-da-da-da-da.
So you were arrested?
I was arrested there and then, they...
Did they take you to the police station?
Yeah, so I obviously had my daughter at home and I had a couple of minded children there. So I had to shout a neighbour at the window.
Because you're a carer.
Yeah, I'm childminder. So I had a couple of my minded children there as well. So I had to get hold of Ray and get him to come home, look after the children. So the police were hanging around for quite a while because I couldn't just leave the children.
I want to say something here, folks. This is the first time I've met Lucy. As I say, I've reported about her regularly over the last couple of years, and already, this lady was sent to jail. This is ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. So you must have felt with a kind of growing sense of horror that this is getting serious. This is getting serious. And let's just stress again, prior to this, I think you told me you've had one speeding ticket in your life. That was your only crime ever.
Yeah.
So this was unfamiliar territory to you. And presumably after you were arrested, how soon were you charged?
So I was arrested on the Tuesday, so it's almost a week after I sent the original tweet. They let me out that night and said there was not enough evidence to charge me, and let me out on bail with conditions not to post on social media, which I kept to, I didn't. Mm-hmm. They came back for me on Friday morning around 7 in the morning. I was just putting my bins out, hadn't even dried my hair. There was 2 police officers at my door. We're re-arresting you. I was like, why? They said, you need to come with us. And then it turned out, well, they told me they had new evidence. So what had happened was the original complainant that had reported my tweet had then obviously was not very happy about the fact that they'd released me on the Tuesday, and then presented them with tweets that some of them went way back on my Twitter, maybe a year or 2 ago. So he was obviously watching everything I was saying and doing. It's a bit weird, really. But so
there are people like that out there, Lucy,
so he presented with the police with these tweets that he perceived to be racist. You know, one of them where I called my friend a derogatory name, where he'd called me one first. It was just banter between two friends. Yeah. One of them where I'd said, you know, that it happened that there was a guy around the same time. There'd been a guy in a local park next to me. He was an immigrant and he got arrested for masturbating over children in the park. Right. So it was a conversation about that. I'd put a sick face and I said he's Somalian, I guess, because he was Somalian, he looked Somalian. It was just a description, but apparently, you know, that's racist. You can't use that anymore. You can't point out that somebody looks to be Somalian, and apparently you can't say that it's sick that a grown man is, you know, masturbating over children in the park. Apparently that's racist too.
It's ridiculous.
So yeah, they came back at me, and then they kept me in the cells all day. And I remember, like, I'd been really polite and really calm the whole time. But by this point, it kind of like 8 o'clock at night, I was like, I want to go home now. I want to go home now. No, you can't. We're just waiting. I said, you're doing this on purpose. Like, just let me go home.
It would have been.
So anyway, about 9 o'clock that night, they came and got me and charged me with the charge that they charged me. And I was just like,
that was inciting racial hatred. Yes, no mention of violence.
No, the word violence is not used in my charge.
Okay. Well, let's fast forward to so you end up in court, but more to the point, was your lawyer, was that legal aid?
Yeah, some of it was, some of it wasn't.
Your lawyer advised you to plead guilty.
He did. Yeah.
Because this was the message for those of you watching abroad around the world. This was the message given to all the defendants. 385 people ended up in jail after those summer riots, the summer of 24. Of those, 12 were for tweets, but all 385 for tweets, Facebook, social media posts. All 385 of them were advised by their lawyers, look, plead guilty and they'll go easy on you. So you were told that, right?
Yep.
You go to court, plead guilty, and they give you 2 years and 7 months. What did you feel like at that moment?
I was really shocked. I was expecting a custodial sentence.
Were you?
Because they'd made that quite clear. Regardless of mitigating circumstances, they weren't interested in anything that had gone on or any mitigation or anything like that. They'd made it quite clear before they knew anything that I was, as Judge Crane said, I was going to be serving a lengthy custodial sentence. But after, discussions with my lawyer and stuff, he was like, well, you're probably looking at about 2 years. With tag and all that, your time served, you'll be out by Christmas. So I was thinking, right, well, I'll be out by Christmas then. No. And then, obviously, I had my credit, so my 25% for going guilty.
Right.
But all the judge did was added it on the other end.
Really?
He said, well, had you have gone to trial and been found guilty, the starting point would have been this, so that's where I'm going to go from. But the whole point of putting your guilty plea in is to get your credit. But actually pleading guilty for me was.
Well, I think that the consensus is that you and the other 384 people who went to jail were all conned. That the government, the authorities here were waiting to throw the house at you. So you get sentenced, you get taken to prison. You went to Peterborough jail.
Yeah.
Well, tell us what was your first experience like? What was your first night there like? It must have been horrific.
It was. I was absolutely terrified, to the point the prison officer that booked me in was like, I've never ever seen anyone look so terrified, Lucy, as what you did when you came in. But to be fair, they were lovely. Most of the prison officers at Peterborough are lovely.
Okay.
You know, they really are
nice.
quite kind and good at their job. So she made me feel at ease. But, you know, I just didn't know. And I remember walking in thinking, oh, this isn't quite like how I expected. It's not kind of how you see it on the telly in these American programmes and stuff. It's a bit nicer.
It's never like it is on the TV. It never is.
But yeah, I got in fairly late at night, so I was just locked in a cell and, you know, and told, you know, we'd be let out the following morning. So you can imagine I was absolutely terrified.
Yeah. And while you were in there, I mean, you at one point you were manhandled. They switched you to a more severe wing, ominously called the Bronx wing. Why did they switch you from that to the violent, dangerous criminals?
So, long story short, I'd come back from Drake Hall because I'd been in Drake Hall for a few months, transferred back to Peterborough at my request because I preferred Peterborough to Drake Hall. It was near.
Hang on, so I didn't realise you went to two jails.
Yeah, so I went to.
Your first jail was
Peterborough.
Was Peterborough. Okay.
Then I went to Drake Hall for a few months, and then I went back to Peterborough. So I'd come back from Drake Hall.
What was Drake Hall like?
It wasn't for me. It's a bit more feral than Peterborough. It's more open.
So you actually requested to go back to Peterborough?
Yeah, so I requested to go back to Peterborough.
And they at least did that for you?
Yeah, so they let me go back. And then, so everyone gets put on induction wing. Whoever you are, whatever you are, when you first get into prison, you're all put on an induction wing, and then it's decided based on your character or your offence or whatever, which wing they're going to put you on. But obviously they knew me well at Peterborough. I'd never even had so much as what they call a red IEP, which is like a telling off, if you like.
Yeah.
And I wanted to go on the enhanced wing, which was where I was supposed to be going just before I left Peterborough. They used to literally ask me every day to move on there, and I'd be like, no, I'm happy where I am. And it became a bit of a running joke, you know, that I wouldn't move there. And then, so I came back and I said to the officer, can I come onto your wing? She said, yeah, there's 2 people moving on Tuesday. I'll come and get you. Anyway, Tuesday went, Wednesday came, and then another officer thrust some bags at me as I was leaving my cell to go on a visit, actually, to see my friend, and said, you need to pack your bags, you're moving. I said, oh, what, to E1, to enhance? No, to A2. I said, no, I'm going to enhance. That's what's been agreed. That's what they've told me. I can go there. I was just waiting for a space. No, you haven't passed security. And I said, why haven't I passed security? Intel. And I said, well, I find that very hard to believe, given that they used to ask me every day to go there before I left Peterborough. I said, I haven't been up to, any mischief while I was gone. I said, so can you tell me what that is, please? No, I can't. Anyway, long story short, they moved. They said, no, you're going. They nicked me because I said, well, I'm not going to A2. I'm not going upstairs. It's the Bronx. I said,
Is that when they manhandled you?
Yeah,
they forced you up the stairs?
They nicked me. I went to the nicking, and the governor told me that I thought I was better than everybody else, and I was no better than anyone else in that prison, and I would be moving to A2. So I just sat on the floor and cried. So with that, 3 of them, 4 of them, I think there was about 7 of them at one point on me, bent me up. He dragged me up the stairs and were like, you will go to A2. But apparently that's all right. That's reasonable and proportionate force according to them.
So A2 was nicknamed the Bronx wing. And what was it like in there?
Yeah, do you know what? It was actually OK in the end. It wasn't too bad.
Tell me about the other prisoners. How did they treat you?
OK. At first, I think they were a bit like, she's a bit different to us. But, once they got to know me, they were, some of them, I met some really good women in prison, other women that just shouldn't be there. And yeah, everyone's, at Peterborough especially, they are genuinely quite kind there.
Well, look, while you were in there, obviously being treated quite badly. I mean, they shouldn't be putting you in that wing and manhandling you up there. I mean, there are people like me, media, a lot of supporters in the media, politicians as well. We were shouting from the rooftops, this woman, this is ridiculous. This woman shouldn't even be in jail. As I say, it wasn't just you, but you became the kind of figurehead of these unjustified prison sentences handed out to people who put a few hurty words on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram. Keir Starmer over in Washington telling the president, we're very proud of our freedom of speech here in Britain. And I kept saying, you put people in jail for tweets. You can't say you're proud of freedom of speech if you're doing that. So you became sort of famous for this, if you know what I mean. And as I understand it, because of that, you're a young mum, and mothers are kind of quite regularly allowed weekend visits to their kids. You're allowed out for the weekend.
Yeah.
But you never got that, did you? And what reason did they give you for treating you differently to other young mums? What did they say?
So the first one, Peterborough's first excuse was, you're too high press interest, we can't let you out because of the press. But if you read...
That's our fault.
Yeah, your fault. If you read the Ministry of Justice guidelines for ROTLs, they call it release on temporary licence, childcare ROTLs, it doesn't say anything about them. I hit the bar for every single criteria. They said, this is what you need to be able to go on ROTLs, low risk to the public, sentence, this, that, the other.
ROTL, what does that mean?
Release on temporary licence.
Oh, right, yeah. And your little girl is called
Edie. She was 12 at the time.
And so you assumed that you would at least, I don't know, is it once a month or something?
Yeah, you build it up. So you start off on once a month, then as time goes on, you get a few more days, and you can work it up to four nights a month.
It's a two-pronged question here. How did you feel when they didn't let you do this? And possibly more importantly, how did Edie feel?
Oh, she was devastated. She kept saying to me, Mummy, can you come home near Christmas? Can you get ROTL? Can you come home on my birthday? And like, no, darling, I can't. Why not? Because they won't let me. You know, stupidly, we'd mentioned to her that hopefully I'd be able to come home. We were just trying to give her some positivity, be able to come home. But no.
Was she able to come and see you?
Yeah, she did. They came most weeks.
So Ray and Edie came to see. And so, I mean, I've spoke to Ray and about Edie and the strain he went through. I mean, that must have been a worry for you, because I personally witnessed the strain and the stress that Ray was going through. He was very broken by it. What did you feel about that?
It was horrific. That was the worst part for me. Like, I could have done prison quite easily if it wasn't for my family. But I had a child at home and a husband that, when the mother and the wife just disappeared overnight, he didn't even know our mortgage was with, because I sorted out all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I see you're the...
He was like thrown in the deep end, he had to deal with what everything was going on with me, keep Edie on the straight and narrow, keep the house, work 2 jobs. It was a lot for him. He's not very well either. Yeah. It was a lot.
And how is Edie now? I mean, how did it affect her throughout your...
She's very angry, I think, over it.
That?
She doesn't,
that's kind of good, I think.
Yeah, she's it has a massive negative effect on her, and that's do you know what? That's the person it hurt the most. Yeah. Is my child.
And how did you feel? So, as I say, people like me, politicians, we were doing our best to plead your case. I believe I'm right in saying that the only politician who actually came to visit you was Richard Tice.
Tice, yeah.
Deputy Leader of Reform UK, a friend of mine, actually. Did you feel abandoned?
I don't think I felt abandoned, because I knew that there were a lot of people on the outside, jumping up and down at the fact that I was in prison and trying to help me and trying to get me out, and people but Keir Starmer didn't care. I think even Trump had something to say. President Trump had something to say about it.
Yeah,
And if he can't do anything about it,
Keir Starmer not only didn't care, he fully approved of your imprisonment.
Absolutely.
He made a big thing of it. But you would not have witnessed this. But at one point, you may have caught up with it since your release. But incredibly, I mean, you became famous. You were always in the papers. Front page sometimes, often on the TV, often on the radio. When Keir Starmer was interviewed about, or was sort of pressed on your case, somebody said, what about, he was on one of these prime ministerial visits to a factory or something. And a TV journalist said, what about the Lucy Connolly case? Do you think she should be in jail? And he went, I'm not familiar with that case. He pretended he didn't.
I don't believe that for one second.
No, daughter, why? He was lying again. But what he did go on to say was he fully approved of jailing people who incite racial hatred and violence. So he was never going to be on your side. What annoyed me personally about the Tories, Kemi Badenoch, quite a few of them did stand up and say the way you were being treated wasn't fair. But their only point was this. They said, oh, well, she should be allowed to go back and see her kid, her little daughter, which, of course, you should have been. But the Tories stopped short of saying what they should have done, which in my view is you should never have been in jail.
Which is why the Tories lost the last election and they won't be getting in again anytime soon.
Because wasn't Ray a Conservative councillor?
Yeah, he still is.
Is he?
I mean, he had 2 seats. He lost one to Reform in the last elections and he managed to hold on to the other one.
So when you say about the Tories, they should have supported you to the hilt, if you ask me. And you obviously have formed a relationship now with Reform. Didn't Ray think of coming with you?
He might well do, yeah. You never know.
You're still working on it.
I'm still working on him, yeah.
So in terms of Reform, you're going to work with them as a sort of free speech advocate?
Well, I hope so. And, I do think that the sensible thing to do is to work with the people that you think are going to get in power in government next. I'm certainly not going to be able to work with the Labour peers at the moment. We're clearly not going to get on.
No. I mean, Labour are never going to. Labour approve of your imprisonment.
Of course they do.
Labour approve of sending people to jail for tweets. My view is, first of all,
Party for young working families. Yeah.
Hard-working families. Obviously, when they say, well, the hard-working, this is the party for hard-working people. I always want to say, yeah, well, what about me? What about lazy people like me? Why don't you stand up for me? But seriously, the Reform, I think, do want to work with you as an advocate of free speech and as a citizen of this country, as someone who's suffered because of this. Do you worry about the erosion of freedom of speech? Because you are a serious victim of that.
Massively. At the end of the day, what I said wasn't nice, and I appreciate that. And like I said, it wasn't my finest moment. But are we really, really putting mothers in prison for essentially, as you say, hurty words? They could have dealt with me in other ways. There's communities. There's 1,001 other ways you can deal with people that, have done something they shouldn't have done. Putting a mother in prison, taking them away from their child at a cost of the taxpayer of a minimum of £55,000 a year. How is that a good use? How is that in the public's interest?
It's not, absolutely. Very good point. Well, in terms of freedom of speech, what did you think of Charlie Kirk's assassination?
Oh, it's just horrendous. It's just so sad. And it's amazing how many people I've spoken to about it that have said, I can't believe how upset I am about a guy dying that I've never met. And I think all of us that have got a heart actually feel like that. You've got some young guy that has essentially been killed because you don't agree with his opinions. Just like we call them 77th Brigade went after me because they don't agree with mine. Like I said earlier, somebody's clearly been watching my Twitter for quite some time because they didn't agree with my, and worse still, it was, let's have it right, they were really after Ray. They weren't really after me.
Because he's a Tory councillor.
And even after I got imprisoned, the Labour MPs and the councillors locally continued to go after Ray. The council employed some swanky legal firm in London to try and take him down, to come to the conclusion that he hadn't actually done anything wrong and breached any,
Why were they after him? What was tweets
because he
as well?
took their seat. He took their seat.
Took their seats.
He took their seat. It is the long and short.
How would you describe your politics, Lucy?
I would say I was centre-right. I just want everybody to be OK. I really begrudge being called far-right. I'm not a fascist, I'm not a Nazi, and I really think this rhetoric needs to stop. I'm not a socialist. I would never vote Labour for the simple reason I'm not socialist. I don't agree with it. But I would very much say I was pretty centre-right.
Is it true that were you trying to get, before his sad death, were you trying to form a connection with Charlie Kirk?
No. I followed him and I knew who he was, and I was pretty impressed by him and what he was able to achieve. And obviously, I was being updated while I was in prison. My friends were saying, oh gosh, you know, Charlie Kirk's talking about you, he's defending you, he's said something about you on his show and stuff, which kind of made me smile because, you know, he was big guns out there, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And you know what? He just talked a lot of sense. He really did.
And if we start calling, see, this is it. You know, I'm not exactly famous for being a left-winger, but like yourself, I would describe myself as a sort of centrist right of centre. I'm quite sort of left-wing on quite a few social issues, but politically, I'm not very left-wing. But these people, Sadiq Khan and the gang, they call people like you and me, because we're not left-wing, we're far right.
But that's okay. That's okay for them to call you basically a fascist.
Yeah.
But it's not okay for anyone else to say what they... So basically, you can only say what you want if you vote Labour. That's what they're saying,
exactly
isn't it?
Right. They're allowed to use vicious words about us, and particularly you, but we're not allowed to...
You're whipping people up into a frenzy here. You know, these people, they're bad people, they deserve to be... You know, Charlie Kirk is a perfect example. How can anyone in their right mind think that killing a young guy with his whole life ahead of him, with 2 young children and a beautiful wife, is okay?
Let's go back to the kind of original premise that we were talking about, the reason people got so angry after the Southport murders. It was because of the migrant crisis. Those were protests about the migrant crisis. They were depicted as riots. Actually, if you think about it, thousands and thousands of people took part in those. Mostly, they were normal demonstrations, protests against the migrant crisis. A few people threw bricks and went over the top. Those are the ones that went to jail. But mainly, these were just standard issue protest demonstrations, public demonstrations. In terms of the migrant crisis, this is the problem, isn't it? It is that we continue to let in, on an almost weekly basis, thousands and thousands and thousands of young men of sexually active age about whom we know nothing. Worse still, they come from cultures, Middle Eastern cultures, Islamic cultures, where they have a very different attitude to women than we do. Not so long ago, an Afghani migrant who broke into this country illegally. I think he was 23 years old or something. He broke in, claimed asylum, was sent to Scotland to stay in Falkirk in a hotel up there. Almost immediately, he walked out of the hotel, found a local vulnerable 15-year-old girl, took her behind the pub and raped her. When he got a sentence of 12 years, he was sentenced to 12 years, he was furious. He lost his temper. But his defence was this, Lucy. This is what shocked me. And I've got another example for you in a second. His defence was, nobody told me that you had such different attitudes to women here than we do in Afghanistan. In other words, what he's essentially saying, well, you know, where I come from, we're pretty relaxed about rape. I came here, I didn't realise that you were so against it. I mean, this is the problem. It is this cultural divide, this massive cultural divide between these young men that we're letting into the country, because most of these migrants are young men, about whom we know nothing, but they come from these cultures where women's safety, shall we say, is not top of their priority list. Absolutely.
They don't have the same... Nobody, I've never heard anybody say every single person that comes in this country illegal is a rapist and a murderess and a bad person. I'm sure the majority of them are not. But we don't know that, do we? Because like you said, they do have a different culture. They don't have the same respect for the women and the children that we do. They do have different laws. So that is a worry. And it's a worry as a mother and a father and as a grandparent to your young children.
And it's getting worse. To go back to Charlie Kirk, I don't know if you've seen this story that's just come out today. Jimmy Kimmel, the American talk show host, he's just basically been fired by the ABC network, or his show has been taken off air. He's a late-night talk show host for the foreseeable future, because he delivered this extraordinary diatribe last night on his show. And he said that this kid, Tyler Robinson, the shooter, the assassinator of poor Charlie Kirk, by the way, a 31-year-old loving husband and the father of 2 little kids, no one deserves to die for their political opinions. He said that Tyler Robinson, this is Jimmy Kimmel, he said Tyler Robinson was actually a member of MAGA. He was part of Trump's mob. Well, it's just not true. The truth is that he was clearly had far left sympathies, and he lived with a trans woman, you know, a bloke who pretends that he's a guy who pretends that he's a woman or wants to be a woman, was big into trans issues and all that. Jimmy Kirk said, no, it was MAGA. And I'll tell you why. Because he's a liberal, in the American sense, a left-winger, and he wants this assassinator to be a Trump supporter. Not true, but he said it, and ABC have taken him off air. What do you think about that?
Well, I think I haven't seen exactly word for word what he's saying, what he said, but if what you're saying is true, I think that's, you know, it's a bit double standards, isn't it, really? If we're having free speech, we're having free speech. As long as it's done in a way that we're not... It depends. If he was advocating the death of Charlie Kirk, that's completely different, isn't it? If he's saying, you know, we should go out there and we should, you know, hurt other people that have different opinions to us. But just because you've got... As long as your opinion, as long as it's non-violent and it's done in a, you know, respectful way, we shouldn't be cancelling anybody because their opinion doesn't...
Absolutely.
You know, align with yours.
And what happened to you is still going on. Yeah. There's a story out there right now. It came out today. I did a story last night about a journalist who had to go for a police interview and is still under criminal investigation for harassment because she tweeted 3 accurate tweets about a former copper who was being charged with harassment. It's going to be in court in Bodmin in November. She did 3 tweets about this, and this ex-copper complained that she was harassing him and causing him fear and distress. So the cops were called on her, and she's under criminal investigation for this. There's a story out today which is shocking. It's a woman called Deborah Anderson. She's an American citizen. She lives here, mother of 2, cancer patient, undergoing chemotherapy. Thames Valley Police turn up at her home, demanding that she apologise for social media posts. She still doesn't even know what social media posts they're talking about. And since when do you think, Lucy, the police decided it was their job to get people to apologise for hurty words? Well, when did this happen?
I'm not quite sure. She made me laugh because she said to him, didn't she, you know, I'm an American and I'll get, you know, Elon onto you and I'm part of the Free Speech Union and I'm not apologising to anybody. And the police officer was just like, you know, I kind of wish I took that stance a bit more because, you know...
Well, listen, it's great that you come to talk to me, and I know you've done other interviews as well. I mean, you're clearly... you're not going to let what happened to you pass, are you?
No.
So what are your plans going forward? How are you going to... I mean, this will help, I hope. How are you going to pursue your case? How are you going to pursue your cause now? How are you going to campaign to try to restore the freedom of speech that this government, this Labour government, is eroding, is getting rid of?
Wow, I have to be very careful right now because I'm under licence conditions. Okay. Don't want to get recalled.
Yeah.
But when that is over and I'm free to basically say what I want within reason, I will just, you know, keep highlighting people's cases and keep, you know, highlighting the 2-tier system. You cannot have a system where, dependent on your political bias, is whether you're going to get arrested or not for what you say. And, you know, hopefully the Americans will back us. I mean, they have been backing us, haven't they? And they're a massive ally to the UK. Hopefully, also, I really would like to get involved, as you know, in prison reform, in women's prison reform, and work with some charities and just represent these women, really, that have no one, you know, batting for them.
On a sort of light-hearted basis, did you ever think that you would, your name would be bandied around the Oval Office, JD Vance, the president, talking about Lucy Connolly?
The girls in prison were so excited. They were like, "Oh my God, your name is being mentioned about, you know, in the American, in the White House," and I was just like, "Yeah, I know." Yeah. I didn't really know. I was a bit like, "Oh wow."
Yeah. But you've achieved a kind of a fame, and it sounds to me as if you're going to use that fame in a positive way and fight the cause, fight the good fight for freedom of speech.
I mean, I could sit here and be bitter and, you know, and slag off the government, but where's that going to get me? It's not going to change anything. They're not going to change their opinions. But I think I would implore everybody to, you know, to join the Free Speech Union and stand up for people when they think, you know, stop with this herd mentality. I think that's a lot you say about, you know, you feel I was let down by politicians and stuff. I think that was the problem. It's like this herd mentality. No one dare come out and speak, even though they knew that it was wrong and that's not what they stand for. They were too scared of speaking up because of what might happen to them, you know, but actually, it only took one person, and in this case, actually, it was Dan Wootton and Alison Pearson. It took for them to say, hang on a minute, this is not right, and run with it. And they both took a risk on me, of which I thank them for massively, and yourselves. You know, there were very few journalists even that were prepared to stand up and say, you know, this isn't right. You know, why are we putting women in prison for things like this, you know? And,
I know journalists who...
Do we have free speech in this country or do we not have free speech in this country?
Exactly. I know journalists who say, oh, Lucy Connolly, she's a convicted criminal. Well, I always said, yeah, she's wrongly convicted. You know, the law can be an ass.
Sarah Poachin put it really well the other day when she was being questioned. They said, oh, you know, do you think Lucy Connolly is a hero? And she said, no, I don't think she's a hero, but I think she's a victim of you know, an unjust system, you know. Yeah. And I think that's exactly what it is. I'm not a hero, but I am 100% a victim of, you know, a two-tier justice system.
And last kind of couple of questions really, do you feel that this ordeal, this horrific ordeal you've been through in a kind of strange way has made you stronger?
Yeah, definitely. Like, and as I said to Alison at the beginning, you know, I've already been through the worst thing in my life. That's already happened to me.
Yes.
So you can't get any worse than that. So anything you do to me now is not really anything in comparison to that. And like I said, I could have comfortably done prison as in, if it was all about me, I'd have put my head down and I'd have been like, well, I'd just done it. But it wasn't just about me, it was about my child and my family and all the knock-on effect, you know, and all the families that were left without childcare overnight, you know, because they locked me up instantly and stuff. A lot of people were affected by, you know...
Well, look, millions of people, me included, were shocked by what happened to you. You were a victim of terrible injustice. Sarah Poachin said that you're not a hero, you're a victim, but from what I can see, I think you may emerge as a hero if you carry on with this excellent campaign. Lucy Connolly, it's been a privilege to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Kevin. Thank you.